Hello, Florida 11th and 12th grade violinists, and congratulations on taking a little time to hopefully grow and get some ideas for preparing for your all-state audition. Today we're going to be discussing Kreuzer's Etude number 37 and the prescribed excerpts from the fourth movement of Brahms's Fourth Symphony. However, this is not your complete all-state audition. As you already know, you'll need to take care to prepare your scales and your sight reading as well. This video is intended as a supplement to the wonderful instruction I'm sure you're already receiving from your private teachers and from your orchestra directors. And the instructions on this video can be pretty challenging. I'm sort of assuming that you've already kind of got the notes with some of these instructions. But if you're not there yet, I hope my materials can also be useful to you. For example, if you're still working on getting the notes, you can view my video of these excerpts and use the embedded feature in YouTube to slow them down, which allows you to slow them down without changing the pitch. Also, in each of my videos that I've made, I pull out certain concepts, and in the 7th and 8th grade video, I discuss just a general ideas for preparing anything, for starting any piece of music. So you may want to take a look at that video to remind yourself to start slowly and to take what you want from those ideas on how to prepare. But once you kind of got a basic knowledge of the notes, we can take a look at some of these ideas in Kreutzer number 37 to start. If you look at this etude, it's got a very, very, very repetitive motive. I didn't count how many times this motive repeats, but it's constant throughout the etude with very, very rare exception in bar 10 and the last bar. So when we're working on this etude, we need to make a decision about what is our standard method of playing this motive in order to be consistent. Not that you wouldn't want to vary it in certain places, perhaps, to bring out a little phrasing idea, but we want to vary it on purpose and not by accident. So I am choosing to play the slurs as marked, but actually not play the dots on the 16th. I'm playing those as détaché, separate but not particularly short. And these decisions, as I understand it, are legal for this audition because there are many editions of Kreutzer and many opinions, and I suggest you confer with your teacher to make your decision. Now, because this is, again, so repetitive, I think another important part about this etude is to make sure we're really hearing the phrasing and color changes in order to give it a little bit of musicality and momentum, not to be completely boring. It doesn't have to be. It's actually some really interesting harmonies. For example, in bar 11, we changed to A flat major. We had previously been in F minor. So I actually like the suggested dynamic change, which is again a decision you can make with your teacher, but mezzo forte is just a slightly warmer, implies a slightly warmer sound and dynamic than forte. So I'd like to think about the notes being just slightly longer and perhaps a little bit more open vibrato for the warmer key of A flat major. Another place that I look at when I'm thinking about ways to keep this musical and interesting is bars 41 and 42, where we have not only the same rhythmic motive, but exact same pitches for 4 motives in a row. So we don't want to play those exactly the same for 4 times. So my decision is to just grow just slightly. Not a big deal, but something to give it some interest. As I mentioned, I wanted to bring out a concept, just a practice concept, a general practice concept for each excerpt. In this etude, I'd like to talk about using the metronome. There are several ways to use a metronome, although we should be careful to never have it replace our internal rhythm. We can use it as an external guide in just basic preparation. So if you want to if this is something that would help you to really carefully prepare something, then you would want to start the metronome tempo very slowly and with subdivisions. So even though this is in 4/4, I would probably put the 8th note value on my metronome, or put my metronome value and divide it with 8 notes, depending on how your app works, or your metronome. So I'm suggesting we start not at 96, but at 60, although even slower may be appropriate. Whatever speed in this type of preparation that you probably want to do whatever speed that you can play it all perfectly. So, but if we were to start at 60, with the eighth notes going, it would sound like this. Let me actually quick take them out. So you can see this is 60 for a quarter note. There we go. But I'm going to put the eighth notes in because I talked about subdividing. So if you play just the first bar or so, it would sound like this. Right? The whole etude that way, and then maybe take out the eighth notes as your next step. Right? Can you imagine how well grounded you'll feel if you really go step by step, first at a slow tempo, then just a few clicks up, rather than sort of skipping steps like we all do. So the skipping steps till we get to 96. However, this is a video, so we are going to skip steps, like a good cooking show. And we're just going to go straight to 96, which would sound like this. And here's where I think the creativity can come in. If you've gotten prepared all the way to tempo, or perhaps a little beyond tempo, in case you go faster, slower. So if you're prepared, you can start to have fun with the metronome, I think. One thing I like to do to keep myself practicing, but also keep my brain engaged, is to play on the off beats, like this. Pretty challenging, but also kind of jazzy. Maybe you would start that a little slower if you're not used to it. Also, once you've really mastered this tempo, it's time to start taking the crutch of the metronome away. So rather than just turning it off, you can gradually remove the metronome by spreading out the beats. So if I'm at 96, I'm going to go down to 48, half the tempo, and see if I can keep the tempo with a beat only every 2 beats. Or we can try every 4 beats. So I'm going to go down to 24. There's no need to keep that beat on beat 1 every time. You could try to do every 4 beats on beat 2, 3, 4, or an off beat, which I'm not sure I could demonstrate without practicing a little bit more. This idea of pulling out beats or putting beats on different parts of the bar cross-applies pretty well to Brahms 4, fourth movement of Brahms 4. So we're going to talk about that really quickly. The tempo of this is 100, as you know. So assuming you've worked up your preparation to that speed, including using subdivisions and then taking them out, you know, typically our 33 would sound like this with quarter note beats. But if I want to keep my brain engaged, in this case, also reflect what's going on in the music a little bit, which is that the orchestra, the lower strings play on beat 3 of the bar. I'm going to divide this by 3 because we're in 3 instead of in a duple rhythm like last time. So I'm going to go to 33, approximately divided by 3. I'm going to try to have this land on beat 3. So lots to be done with the metronome. Again, you could continue to pull out beats as you prepare this. This movement gets interesting because it's a passacaglia, and it's very important to realize that it's written as a concert piece to be played in a hall, so we want to think as musically as we can, and also to be aware of the rest of the orchestra. If you've only learned your part, you've only learned part of this piece. So as I said, it's a passacaglia. Passacaglia is an 8-bar harmonic progression that repeats over and over throughout a piece. It's a Baroque form, and actually Brahms stole this 8-bar harmonic progression from Bach. Bach wrote a chaconne, which is also an 8-bar progression, in one of his cantatas. Stole is a pretty strong word though, because it's very common for composers or any artist to take someone else's idea and develop it. It's probably a form of a compliment, actually. As I said, Bach wrote a chaconne, and a chaconne is very similar to passacaglia in that it is an 8-bar harmonic progression, except that in a chaconne you can only have the principal line in the bass. And in a passacaglia, you can have the principal line in any voice at all. So it's very similar, and Brahms took that progression and made a symphony out of it, or a movement of a symphony. And you can kind of see, if you take a look, this is basically organized in 8-bar phrases. There's an exception though, from B to C, where that's basically a 16-bar phrase. In general, in the 8-bar phrases at least, you can see how the harmony leads us to lead the phrase to at least bar 5, maybe bar 6, and then a little bit away. So understanding the phrasing can help us with direction in our playing of this piece. It also helps me inform a little bit my dynamics. So if I'm starting a long phrase and I have a ways to go to create a climax, I'm wanting to maybe start a little softer, even possibly softer than is actually marked. So for example, around letter B, the bar before is the end of a phrase, bar before B. So I do a little decrescendo, and then at B, I'm starting a very long phrase all the way to the bar before C. So I actually start a little lower, maybe mezzo forte, maybe even slightly lower than mezzo forte, so that I can not only do those 2-bar swells, but I can be thinking as and preparing for a 16-bar phrase. Another place that I take a little dip, not very much, but a slight dip, is in bar 65, where again, I'm starting kind of a long progression. I just make it a little bit less than forte, so that I have room to build each of those sequences. The concept that I'd like to talk about in this piece of music that can apply to everything is the use of drones for intonation. As you know, intonation is very important, and this is just one way to develop our ears and make sure that our pitch center stays stable throughout. So in this case, this movement is in E minor, and the whole excerpt that you're playing can be, you can use a E drone for that. And I like using, rather than a mechanical sound, you may already know about this app called Cello Drones, and it's available for free. You can Google it on YouTube. So I Googled cello drones and I picked an E, and that will have a recording of a cello playing an E and a fifth above, which is a B. So you're going to have a fifth to tune to if you use this app. And then we're going to just play very slowly each note and sort of tune it to that fifth, to the E and the B. So I'm going to play the drone, and I'm actually going to play the very first line, which is pizzicato, but I'm going to play it arco. I'm only going to play the top line of it because I want you to hear the principal line of this passacaglia. So you would actually be playing the other notes of those double stops as well and pizzicatoing them, but as a way of hearing, you could start with one line at a time in a pizzicato and play them arco, and then add in the second line. You can hear that not every note is an E or a B, but we can kind of get a sense of where the note goes based on the drone. So at letter A, the principal line is in the top line of those pizzicatos, and then you can add the rest. And in measure 33, we have a variation. So again, I would just tune very slowly with no rhythm, each note, and especially the ones that are not an E or a B, I listen carefully to find how they work with them. Sometimes I like to sit down when I do this just to kind of get any kind of rushing out of me. So I develop my patience muscle, if you will. This is bar 33. One important thing to be sure of is that when you tune to a drone, make sure your violin is in tune with the drone, otherwise you're teaching your hand the wrong spacing. So in this case, I had already checked before the video that my E worked with the E and that my violin was in tune. Anyway, I hope these are helpful ideas for you. I'm certainly available by email if you have any questions. My goal is for you is success, by which I mean that you grow, regardless of the outcome of the audition. That's how I define success. So I wish you success, meaning growth, as a violinist and a person.